Welcome to a survey of management theory and applications. Herein, we will go over prevailing views to supplement management theory and its applications. In the following, we will look at what it takes to be a manager, a leader, or a business owner. I would like you to know what the foremost civilizations think of leadership. This is what the preeminent text or scripture says. And this is Jesus Christ saying, "You know the customs of the non-Jews. They lord it over others, while their high officials exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must serve you, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Note how the prophet in this civilization forming text says, "The first among you must be your quote unquote servant," and how the leader manager must be there to serve, not to be served, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Obviously, slavery and servitude is illegal and immoral, and no one literally wants you to become a slave or servant. But the idea is to serve those we wish to lead. Do you know what the last phrase means? It means this: when someone errs or sins or harms another, they become indebted to those they injure or sin against or harm, and then they are sent to prisons or reform centers to pay their debts to society. Notice this last phrase that the prophet is saying in this text. The manager leader is to give his life as a ransom for many. What is a ransom? If someone is in debt to society or a criminal or sinner, they are to pay their debts to society, and the leader is supposed to provide ransom for the indebted, meaning the leader, the manager, the monarch is supposed to pay off their debts. The leadership is to pay off the debt or ransom the sinner. How? With their very life. How would you treat those who fall behind in your team and do not perform as well, either in a class project or at work? Think of an example of treating subordinates. How would you treat your subordinates? In the upcoming text, we will go over some exemplary treatment of not only subordinates, but outsiders, outcasts, and criminals. We will go over demonstrated humility of the leadership in the following text. This refers to Jesus Christ. It says, when Jesus Christ had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your leader, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you as an example. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Here, the speaker of the influential text is saying how he is setting an example, where he is illustrating how leadership and management is supposed to humble themselves before the people they serve, their subordinates and employees. Now you may ask, is this practical? Is this a metaphor or merely figurative or allegorical speech? This injunction is literally practiced by the leaders of the wealthiest, most powerful, and foremost organizations, namely the Christian church throughout the globe. The following is an example which we shall play in the next slide. Now we may ask, how would you treat your teammates, those who have fallen behind in your team, do not perform as well, either in a class project or at work? We will now go over an influential text expressing indignation over iniquity or mismanagement. In this text, the leadership are analogized to shepherds, since shepherds tend to manage and lead their flocks, as are managers and leaders who are supposed to tend to and lead their flock. This text will go over how we may treat people who have fallen behind, either socially, financially, at work, or at school. And so it begins. It says, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally. So goes Ezekiel 34, a preeminent text. As you can see, this prevailing philosophy, backed by capitalism, is indignant about exploitation and unkindness towards the weak, or even neglect of the weak and the lost, as evidenced by Ezekiel 34 above. The text continues. It goes on to say, is it not enough for you, O shepherds of Israel, to feed on the good pastures? Must you also trample the rest of your pasture with your feet? Is it not enough for you to drink clear water? Must you also muddy the rest with your feet? Essentially, this text is asking the leadership, are you yourselves enjoying a good life, but at the same time polluting and compromising the lifestyle of people who are lesser than you or less fortunate than you, ask yourselves this question: is this a condemnation of Malthusian economics by any chance? A little bit of background for those who don't know. The good Reverend John Malthus wanted to manage population, and in order to do that, he advocated neglecting sanitation and hygiene, and by encouraging overcrowding and overpopulation so as to discourage people from having children. Unbeknownst to the good intentions of the Reverend, people would begin reproducing despite the poverty, pollution, and overcrowding, worsening the quality of their offspring due to children being exposed to pollution, disease, and suffering. And on top of adding to their numbers, they would end up subsequently burdening the cause of justice and equality as a result. Nonetheless, this text is not a deliberate condemnation of Malthusian economics, since Reverend Malthus was asking for overlooking hygiene and overcrowding in order to discourage reproduction, and he did not advocate for such neglect out of malice or spite. The passage from Ezekiel 34 continues. Ask yourself this question when I read this passage and while I read it: what are the actionable items here? This is what the Sovereign Lord says: I myself will search for my sheep and look after them, as a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them. So will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered. I will bring them out from the lands and the nations and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains. So essentially, the Good Shepherd is himself going to search for the lost and the misled, the criminal, the outcast, and those who have fallen behind, and he will look after them as a shepherd looks after his scattered flock. He will rescue them, and then he will gather them from all over the four corners of the world and bring them into their own land, where he shall pasture them on the mountains. Next, Ezekiel 34 explains how the good manager, the good shepherd, the good leader, and the good citizen will treat their subordinates. It outlines the treatment of the lost who are left behind. I will tend to them in a good pasture, and the mountain heights will be their grazing land. There they will lie down in good grazing land, and there they will feed in a rich pasture on the mountains. I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down, declares the Sovereign Lord. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. But the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. In essence, the text advocates for providing wealth, the rich pastures, rest. He will tend to his sheep and have them lie down. Safety. Which we will go over in the next slide. And everything good for our subordinates. In essence, the good shepherd or the good manager is supposed to bring everything good for his subordinates. Note particularly that the good manager, the leader, the shepherd, the citizen heals the injured and strengthens the weak, but the oppressive and sleek and strong spirit is quote unquote destroyed. Obviously, this is referring to the destruction of the oppressive spirit, not the people's, since we are to even love and heal even the oppressors. This is an example of how good managers are supposed to behave, or what the standards of behavior are for good leadership. The text then goes further into the rewards of the lost. I will make a covenant of peace with them and rid the land of savage beasts so that they may live in the wilderness and sleep in the forests in safety. They will know that I am the Lord when I break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from the hands of those who enslave them. They will no longer be plundered by the nations, nor will wild animals devour them. They will live in safety, and no one will make them afraid. I will provide for them a land renowned for its crops, and they will no longer be victims of famine in the land or bear the scorn of the nations. So, as you can see, the Good Shepherd is supposed to break the bars of the yoke, which is free them. He's supposed to rescue them. He's supposed to give them rest. They may live in the wilderness and sleep in the forests. They will live in safety. He's supposed to feed them. I will provide for them a land renowned for its crops, and they will no longer be victims of famine. They will no longer be plundered, nor will wild animals devour them. How does this apply to management? You will encounter employees and subordinates who have fallen behind. You will encounter employees and people who are lost and who have fallen behind. And you are to free them, give them rest, feed them, and prosper them so they may return the favors to others. You may be wondering if these teachings are pragmatic or practical. You may be wondering if anyone actually does this. The answer is there are entire organizations that do. And it is good to know the ideological and philosophical foundations that the competition is working off of. We will now go over some organizations which more clearly and overtly practice these teachings and injunctions. The armed forces of Western civilization and allied lands adhering to the Abrahamic faith go into service with the intent of sacrificing their lives for the larger nation. The soldiers are expected to pay the ultimate price in service of the people of their country. In return, members of the armed forces get preferential treatment in college admissions, in job postings, and managerial and leadership roles, with mortgages and housing, and other life's necessities and luxuries. This is because they hold on to higher values of literally sacrificing their own lives for the sake of not just their subordinates and superiors, but their entire countryfolk. Plato, for these reasons, listed the defenders of the land, or the soldiery, as the foremost guardians and natural leadership. Are there any other organizations which you can think of which engage in such selfless behavior or hold such selfless behavior as an ideal? Besides the military, we have government organizations where the leaders are civil servants or servants of the people or public servants. We also have clergy who are pastors or literally shepherds of the people. The leadership of the church has been known to endanger their lives repeatedly for the sake of serving their members, their flock, their sheep, or their congregation. Can you think of any martyrs of the faith or martyrs in the military or government services? Any monarchs who have sacrificed their lives for the sake of public welfare? Surely quite a few examples come to mind, and if there is interest, we will go over those too. Now that we have gone over how the military and church of the foremost civilizations have such selfless inclinations, would you like to see every country and every organization be so selfless? What about the mafia? Would you like to see them be so selfless and self sacrificing for the sake of the general public and for humankind? So they may put the interest of the public and other people over their own gang or mafia? What about the Japanese kamikaze pilots in World War II? Would you like to see more Japanese be suicidally selfless in, in working to advance what is fair and loving, what is humane, and advocating for and fighting for humankind and humanity? What about industries that peddle vice? Would you like to see tobacco CEOs or CEOs of industries designated as vice to be selfless in advancing the cause of virtue and putting public interest first? We would like organizations with the highest ideals to have such dedication and selfless love. Now, when we speak of these highest ideals, what are some examples of these high ideals? We've gone over some of them. We shall go over some more briefly. What are some examples of high ideals? One of these ideals is love your enemy. Another is if a thief steals your shirt, give them your coat too. And I shall quickly quote the passage. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that? What credit is that to you? Every sinner loves those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High God, because He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. In this text, the ideal is to be nice and loving towards those who are unkind to you. It also tells you to be nice and loving to those who are needy and steal from you. Then we also have the ideals of rescuing and healing the sinner or the lost or the wayward or the outcast or the criminal, which we have already gone over with Ezekiel 34. The conclusion is that management comes with some of the highest ideals, and your competition has already embraced these ideals, and this is why, most likely, this is why they're doing better than you. You may not have known this, but in management, a management philosophy is a secret weapon, a trade secret, and the competitive advantage which is sometimes hidden in plain sight. Sometimes it is deliberately marketed in a negative light, maybe to discourage the competition from understanding the value of the philosophy. Whatever the case may be, it is best to be aware of what the competition holds dear and to match or exceed them in virtue. These things and more we shall go over in the upcoming lectures.